All right, folks, welcome on into another edition, a special edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones. I think I can only speak for myself. We have successfully dried out from this weekend. I can only speak for myself. Carl, you kind of got the shorter on the stick. How have you fared in the days since?
You know what? I feel all right. I'm a lot better now. I will say Sunday was my day to wind down, watch some ball. I'm still frustrated. My laundry was stinking and stuff. But outside of that, no, I'm good. Friday was as bad as it looked. I don't know if any of you who are listening were at the game, saw it on News 8 or just heard or just looked outside. It was as bad as what you thought it was, okay? So shout out to the kids for braving through that, who all raised the bricks in that weather. And then the next day on Saturday, the rain wasn't there, but woo-wee, it was freezing. Shout out to SUNY Brockport having press boxes, though, and they were heated, kept me warm, and didn't make me go insane. But I'm all good now, man. I'm all good. Got my laundry's not stinking no more. I'm warm. I'm all put together. I'm all good.
Yeah, I took a picture of it. We'll see if we up that. We'll see what was exactly in the picture, what articles of clothing. But the war room of our sports office, after we got done just shedding off all our layers, and it was a sight to be seen for sure. So as you mentioned, we just got done with our sectional finals in football. Rainy on Friday, a little rain and cold on Saturday. We're going to talk about a lot of these teams in our previews, which I'll mention right now because I do a terrible job of teasing our guests. We have two very special guests coming on our show later to preview all of these matchups in the Far West Regionals. And as we've talked about throughout the season, we've got some teams going off to the Albany area. So we've got Frank Wolf of WNY Athletics. We've got Griffin Haas of WTEN out in Syracuse, both very knowledgeable. You're going to learn a lot about these games. So you've got some extra time for these Far West Regional games. They're going to be played on Monday because of the snowstorm. So I hope you guys enjoy that. We'll have that coming for you in just a couple of minutes. But Carl, we saw a lot of great football, a lot of great individual performances for these sectional championships games. What really stood out to you from this weekend's action of football?
You're gonna hear it later in the podcast, and I've been saying this for about 10 weeks now. Styles make fights, and Hilton and Canandaigua were the two teams where, and if it was raining and it was a rainstorm, I will feel confident that they will be able to come out on top. Schrader, we all know they're explosive quarterback play. The Washington brothers can make all the plays on the outside, and not to say they can't run the ball, because they'll also able to do that as well. But anyone who's watched the Cadets over the past, decade or so, they can run the ball. Good luck stopping them. And then running the ball in that weather, once again, is even tougher. Robert Lowry and Jeffrey Broadnax were the show in that one. Thunder and Lightning getting it done. I think they both got a touchdown apiece. It was a fun game just to see that from that perspective. Obviously, the rain kind of dimmed my viewing experience a little bit, but nonetheless, shout out to the Cadets for winning their sectional title in the first year in A, and then on the other side in A2, Canandaigua taking down East. Rematch, but you were at the first matchup. You know that it was a pretty close game with Canandaigua coming back. But this one, Canandaigua took off from Jump Street. Tashi Crockton, 4 touchdowns, and he gave it to you however he wanted. 90 some odd yarder, short yardage, making dudes miss, all in the rain. I don't even know if he had gloves on. He's giving it to you the old school way. Shout out to Mr. Crockton, because it was literally the Tashi Crockton show. I don't know if Canandaigua gave the ball to anyone. They gave it to Tremel Coleman a few times, but when in doubt, give it to Crockton and see what he was cooking up. And boy, it was a 5-star meal.
No, and that's what we've been saying all season long. He's been their only main guy. It was certainly enough when you have a performance like that. And with the weather, obviously these were two teams that won who they definitely got the advantage of the weather. Both teams that lost in the regular season to the opponents. So if you want to say one thing, I would say at least they were not some of them were turned into blowouts, but at least wide enough a gap where, if Hilton beats Schrader by 3 points because, of the rain, I'm sure the Schrader people are a little more upset. With the margin of victory, it's tough to complain too much, but I'm sure there's still plenty of room to complain because it's unfortunate. Hey, that's outdoor football for you. My game on Friday, Class AA, McQuaid taking care of business against Pittsford. Jackson Green, not close to 100%. He tried to give it a go. He ended up, his biggest contribution was on a deep pass where he threw it. It was a reverse pass. So they were just trying to get involved in ways where, he can make an impact without having to run and jump, and because he's still dealing with that leg injury. He did not play in the second half at all. He tried his darndest in the first half. It just wasn't enough for him. John Harding, monster game, 4 touchdowns. He was our Section 5 player of the week. So that was just, it was tied at the half, and then it wasn't in the second half. And then on Saturday's games, how about the way that Batavia game ended, Carl? What a show.
I mean, a show it was. I mean, obviously the box score and like the stats aren't going to tell you that it was something unreal, but you just want to go to the last drive. Batavia has been, whooping up on everybody this year. They took down Monroe, I believe, 28-6 earlier in the year. So it was like, oh, okay, like this game not going to be that close, right? Monroe's up 8-6 late in that game. And then lo and behold, Javin McFarland's marches down the field, has a nice 4th down conversion right in front of me on the sideline. And then 10 or so seconds to go, 4th and goal. McFarland needs to get a score to win. Like there's no get a first down. Like, no, you got to get in the end zone, and throws it up. Name's slipping me right now, but he was number 4.
Arroyo, right?
Vincent Arroyo. Thank you. Vincent Arroyo. Most Hail Marys is a bunch of, balls tipping around and stuff like that. Nah, my man tipped it to himself, came down, snagged it. Everyone around him falls. He's just the one dude standing alone by himself. I'm sitting here, and I didn't realize until I got back to the sports office, but just what a way to lose. It's heartbreaking for the Monroe, because it was going to, be special for them to finally be able to raise a brick. But Batavia, I mean, down but never out. Team that had never had really a close game all year, so you wanted to see how they would fight back when their backs were against the wall. And man, they came out swinging. They cut off that chair in the 12th round, and man, they delivered the knockout blow. So shout out to the Blue Devils for winning in spectacular fashion like that.
Yeah, that was one heck of a finish. We had a couple of good ones. Attica taking down East Rochester Cananda, 16-8. Landon Thomas doing the show there, knocking off the defending sectional champs. OAE type things. Carl, we finally got a chance to see the Aggies. They fit the bill, huh?
Yeah, they're pretty good. Bodie High, Noah Courier. I mean, we talk about how, Manny Sepulveda is one of those kids who's in Class C, but he's really a AA type of guy. Those 2 backs got no business playing in Class D ball because they can ball, man. They're really darn good. I would be very shocked if they don't play in Syracuse. Like, that's a really darn good team, man. And it was my first time being able to watch them, and great community. Had a bunch of signs out front on the gate that I was able to show, which was kind of cool to show the school support community all coming out there. But man, good kids and even better on the field.
And then an 8-man, Pembroke knocking off Canandaigua Greenwood, the number 1 team in the state. We've had them in our rankings. We will have our rankings again. Once again, we're going to have that just in the article on rochesterfirst.com, so you can see that. But at this point, the rankings mean a little bit less. But Pembroke getting it done with a 40-20 victory. I was at that game. Tyson Totten for the Dragons, 5 touchdowns. He had a ridiculous game, 376 yards, 40 attempts. Pembroke's quarterback got hurt early on in that game, so he kind of had to just do it all, running the Wildcat. And man, that kid was something special. We talked last week about Ethan Foote for Canandaigua Greenwood. He busted out a nice run. He had a nice reception to when it was a 1-score game in the third quarter. He had a nice deep reception, but it was Felsky. I'm going to get the first. Caleb Felsky punched out. Great play. Carl was very excited to see that play. And then they scored a touchdown the next play. So a good little sequence for their Pembroke there, as they just really took care of Canandaigua Greenwood.
I mean, that was a shocker to all of us. We had them as our top 8-man team at the bottom of our rankings all year long. But Pembroke, the Dragons, getting it done. I saw them a couple times, I believe, against Finney or Red Jacket, one of the two. And they look good then, and clearly show that they're good enough to win it again.
Yeah, 40-20. That game was probably a little bit closer than the score indicated. I had to stay around till I think the fourth quarter, just because I thought at any moment Canandaigua Greenwood could turn it on. So those are our teams all moving on to the regional round. Pembroke actually playing tonight as we record this on Thursday. So we're going to get those highlights for you tonight. That'll be at Sutherland. As we mentioned before, you're probably aware, there's going to be a little bit of snow going down to the Buffalo area. So those games that were going to be played on Friday and Saturday are now being played on Monday at the host site. So you're going to get some home games for these Section 5 teams. The one caveat, OAE is playing at Brockport because OAE has a grass field, and you don't want to deal with that this time of the year. So those games will be playing Friday. First off, we are going to bring in our first guest here, Frank Wolf of WNY Athletics, breaking down everything for these Section 6 teams, provide a lot of insight, a great guest to have. We're very sad that we did not have Mary Margaret Johnson on the podcast this year. We thank her for all of her contributions in the past, but she's on to greener pastures. But Frank delivered here. So let's bring that interview to you right now. All right. Now, as we mentioned, now bringing in Frank Wolf of WNY Athletics. They do a great job covering Section 6 high school football out there. They're at all the games and our best source for Section 6 information. Frank, how are you doing today?
Very well, AJ and Carl. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the kind words about WNY Athletics. We appreciate it.
No, we've seen your stuff. It's great coverage. These games now getting played on Monday this time around as opposed to Friday. Hopefully all the travel and whatnot isn't messing. Well, for you guys, it's probably worse because before you could just stay in one spot. Now you've got 5 different spots to go to.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky, but we'll get it done. And, I didn't really have much going on Monday anyways with the Bills playing Sunday, we hope. So it's fine. I had nothing better to do on Monday night anyways.
Exactly.
I just worry about what I worry about most of all is the recovery time, because let's face it, 5 of these teams are going to be heading down to Binghamton to play Friday and Saturday in the semis. So I worry about recovery time more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. And starting off with Class AA, I'm sure the reason why we had the snowstorm is because somebody out there was like, Bennett and McQuaid, well, at least this game will be played on a Friday this year, as opposed to, all the chaos and craziness that happened last year with COVID. Of course, that game being played on Tuesday. But we got a rematch this year. Bennett versus McQuaid once again. Bennett's been dealing with some weird things going on, some controversy. Why don't you first off just kind of explain what they've been going through this year?
Well, I'll say this, the only reason why Bennett is not undefeated in their Section 6 schedule is because of a clerical error. Anybody who's watched this team from this area or afar knows that Bennett is a superior team in Western New York in the public schools, and they might be the number 1 team overall. St. Francis will have something to say about that, but Bennett is just a class of their own. I hate to say it, no disrespect to Lancaster, who's had a 7-year run of making it to the Section 6 finals. But Bennett has just been playing on an island for the most part. They've just been dominating team week after week. They started off the season playing Erie PA's McDowell, a top-tier program, and they learned a lot in that game. They went to overtime. They lost, but they had a tremendous showing there. This is all to get they are on a mission to get back to states in Syracuse. They're not overlooking any opponents, but they've done what they had to do to get back to that game. Last year, they were out coached, they were outplayed against Carmel, and they don't want to let that mistake happen again. So they scheduled McDowell, they scheduled Austintown out of Ohio, 2 top tier programs, and then they got to deal with Lancaster, another team that's very tough to play against and out scheme. And Orchard Park never lays down for anybody. And they took care of business in Western New York for sure. They did a number on Orchard Park twice, and they beat Lancaster pretty handily just last Friday at the stadium. And they've got at least 2 D1 players signed, sealed at this moment, with Richard Perry committed to Syracuse, and then Jaden Lewis with UB. But there's probably another 5 to 6 potential D1 players on that roster right now. They'll be a force to be reckoned with. They will not take McQuaid lightly. They will prepare like they would anyone else. But we expect Bennett to roll to the stadium again, and that's because of what they did in this offseason and the teams that they scheduled earlier in the year to prepare for this moment.
Yeah, and with the the forfeits, the clerical error, things like that, have they? I've seen some articles and stuff like that. Have they really kind of used that as once again an us against the world, kind of like they did last year with the whole COVID thing?
You could see some social media chatter and things of that nature, but they're for the most part even keeled. I mean, you're always every program has that parent or that fan out there that's going to put stuff on social media and to excite things and make things, more exciting. But I think deep down, those players realize that they don't have a lot of, they don't really, there's not a huge window here. I mean, Rashard Perry is going to graduate this year. He wants to win a state title. So his focus is on McQuaid this week, one game at a time. Do they use what the clerical error to their advantage? They really didn't need it. That was something that they didn't need. But they didn't need that fuel. But anything, these are high school kids. They're resilient. I don't think they needed the extra bulletin board material, if you will. But now that they have it, they're even more dangerous now than before. So you could say they are, but I don't think they needed it to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, and just looking at their stats, a lot of talented guys. The one player that certainly sticks out, Jameer Thomas.
Yes.
Talked about Mr. Thomas because I've got him as their number 2 rusher and by far their number 1 receiver. So what's he been doing this year?
So he's having an excellent season. He's only a junior, and he's another one of those kids that when I talk about D1 potentials, there's one right there in Jameer Thomas. I believe he's averaging, almost 12 yards a carry. He's definitely a threat. He's going to be someone you're going to have to contain, but he's not. He's not. In my eyes, their number 1 threat. It's Jaden Lewis. He is their best football player next to Rashard Perry, and from a skills point of view, Jaden is the kid that's making the interceptions. He's in on every play. He's a ball hawk. He's the one that's stretching the field. He is the one that's the threat on the outside. He's going to come down with the ball each and every time. Jameer Thomas is an excellent compliment, and I think a lot of teams are focusing so much on Lewis that Jameer is getting a lot of looks, and he's having the numbers he is. Don't take anything away from Jameer Thomas. He earns every yard he gets, but Lewis is the number 1 threat on the Tigers. Their quarterbacks much improved. Antonio Davis, I'll tell you, the last 3 to 4 games he's played, his arm has really been it's been unbelievable to watch. I'm very happy for the young man. He struggled a little bit in the passing game last year. You saw that, especially against Carmel, but the kid settled down. Something has happened the last few weeks with that kid between his footwork, his release, and his confidence. He is playing with an extreme amount of confidence, and he looked phenomenal at the stadium just this past Friday night. I was very impressed. I made a mention to his head coach about the improvement he's made since the finals last year to, where he is right now as a young man. He's been great to watch and very good for that team. I'll tell you what, the one kid, we talk about Rashard Perry or even a couple of the other linemen that they have. We'll talk about them, but Noah McDuffie, the head coach's son, that kid flipped a switch this year. He has, I believe he's just a sophomore. He's another kid that you're going to want to watch out for. You have to know where that kid is on the field all the time. So he's another one of those guys that can read a quarterback like a book, and he's an explosive player, and he's only a sophomore. His older brother is Isaiah McDuffie of the Green Bay Packers. So there's, a lot to think about when you're preparing for this Bennett defense. But he's one of the kids you're gonna have to count for. I don't know how you're gonna stretch the field with a kid like McDuffie out there.
Yeah, and Rashard Perry going to Syracuse. I see him going as a D lineman. Does he play both ways? And then just kind of talk about kind of how he's been able to really take over here.
The kid's a freak. The kid's a freak, and I've been saying it since last year. You will see that kid play on Sundays. He is as good as advertised. I've seen him make plays that would scare the daylights out of a quarterback on film. He does play both ways. He is a Trench Trophy finalist and probably could win that award this year. I will say this: I don't know if he's been bothered by some lower body injury this season. Looks like he got a little banged up in that first game at McDowell, but he's played through it. You mentioned a couple weeks ago with the clerical error, did someone light a fire under that team? Well, I could tell you since that game, that kid has raised his game. So he might be over whatever was plaguing him earlier in the year, because he was, again, scary to watch last Friday against Lancaster. Scary. He's going to be a handful for the McQuaid defensive front
Yeah, and
and offensive front.
With McQuaid, they've got John Harding at running back this year. He's been doing some great things. If they can slow down Harding, I don't exactly know how the Knights get their points. So it sounds like Bennett certainly has the horses in the run defense game to maybe make a big impact in this one.
Yeah, they're exciting to watch, and from this vantage point, the only team I could see beating Bennett is Bennett, and they've cleaned up a lot of areas that were concerning over the past couple of years: penalties, offsides, just the mental mistakes you make, and a lot of that has gone away. And you got to credit that coaching staff for really, from the early parts of the season and training camp, they beat into these kids' heads how important it is to stay focused and not beat yourselves. And I got to tip my hat off to them. They've done a phenomenal job, and they're, like I said, we expect them to move on to the state finals. If McQuaid wins this game, I would have to consider that an upset.
Sounds like it as well. Down in Class A, we've got Jamestown once again emerging from Section 6. Last year, they beat Canandaigua 35-14. This time, they'll be going up against Hilton. Graduated Jalen Putera, your Connolly Cup champion, but it seems like they reloaded and they've got the horses once again this season.
They have some standout players again. Jalen Putera was the Connolly Cup finalist last year, and I believe he was also co-player of the state for Class A. This is a hungry bunch. Coach Tom Langworthy last year, this was a very disappointed group after they lost to Christian Brothers Academy at Cicero last year. Heartbreaking loss, controversial, if you want to say. I was there on the field. I saw how that game went down, and I'm still annoyed with how that game ended, to be quite honest. I thought they got shafted by the officials there. Was not afraid to say it then, and I still say it today. They got jobbed. That game should have never ended the way it did. And I'm from Western New York, Buffalo. I'm not from Jamestown. I'm not, I cover all teams the same. I've never seen a team get jobbed like that before. So I'm on the record saying that, and I'll stick by that. But this is a different team. They had to open up the passing game. And Trey Drake is a commit at North Dakota State. Last year he threw balls when he had to. Butera did everything with his legs. They didn't ask Trey Drake to do a whole lot. This year they did. He had to move that ball. He had to prove to Western New York that he could throw the ball. And he is a great quarterback. He's got solid footwork and a great delivery, finds his targets. Again, when he had to pass last year, he threw. And it should be of no surprise to anybody that he was able to pick up where he left off last year, and that was throwing passes. And he is he's a Connolly Cup contender. He's a finalist this year. I believe he's thrown for almost over 2,300 yards. He's got 27 touchdowns, and he's been spreading the ball around. There's at least 7 different guys who've caught passes for touchdown passes this year for him. Colin Melendez is a big target for him. Darius Freeney is another big target, right on right. His running backs, though, Carson Bain and Sean O'Brien, these 2 guys are tough, very physical. Bain kind of came on the scene late in the season, where O'Brien is not just a formidable fullback and short yardage guy, but on defense, he led the team in tackles. He's got almost 180 tackles this year alone. And he's a beast. He's a football player. He covers the entire field. He's going to be a guy that you want to watch. I haven't been able to read a whole bunch on Hilton. So I'm interested to see how they do. I don't know how far this Jamestown team can go, but I know that they are playing with a lot of animosity with the way things went last year. I think they still have another chapter or 2 that they want to write to finish their story. And I know it would give them a lot of great pleasure to reach the Carrier Dome this year if they can get another step further than they did last year. They have a small window too. With this quarterback, Trey Drake, a 4-year starter there, he moves on. I'm not sure what they have in the pipeline, but they know they have a short window. And this is probably the year that they need to get it done if they're going to get to a state final. This is probably the best chance they have. So I'm sure they're going to game plan accordingly.
Yeah, so Hilton is a team that's been in Double A in the past. This is their first year in Class A, and they're one of those teams where the old adage "styles make fights" comes into play. They're led by their little 1-2 punch, Thunder and Lightning, as I like to call them. Robert Lowry's the Lightning, and then Jeffrey Broadnax brings the Thunder. So, in talking about this Jamestown team, how do they stack up in terms of those teams that like to just ground and pound, run the ball 40, sometimes even 50 times a game?
So, Jamestown is one of those programs that every now and again they're in Double A, then they drop down to A, then they're in Double A again. Well, they're down in A by like 4 students. Now they played Lancaster and Orchard Park week 1 and 2, and they lost both games. Lancaster, probably a little, maybe they were still thinking about last year a little bit too much in that game. Trey Drake probably tried to do a little bit too much to move the ball, and Lancaster came away with the win. It was like a 16-9 one-score game, but I think anybody that saw that game thought Lancaster was the better team in all phases. Now Orchard Park basically came down to a botched snap. Jamestown moved the ball quite well. A lot of drop passes in that game, and then a snap at the end, kind of similar to the Bills situation this past week that we saw with Minnesota, which as a fan, a season ticket holder, I actually left that game early and I did not see that live. So yeah, probably shouldn't even mention that with the section people I sit in. But anyways, so Jamestown, they started the season 0-2, but they've been on point since. They've been beating teams up pretty good. They really haven't had too many close games since, other than this game was against Will North, which was, I believe, week 4, came down to a final possession, but they played Will North just last week, Thursday night, and this for the Section 6 Class A title, and they beat them. They blanked them 34-0, and they've learned from their mistakes. Very well-coached team, one of the top programs for many, many years. It'll be a dogfight. But they are used to playing Double A competition.
And I mean, you look at Trey Drake's numbers, you mentioned them, 27 touchdowns, just 1 interception. So that's a guy who's not only going to, it's not only a guy that's going to sling it around on you, but not going to give you the other team many chances to capitalize on his mistakes there.
Yeah, he's done a phenomenal job of protecting the ball, not turning it over, and just making great decisions. You'll see he's a pro-style quarterback. You'll see when you watch him. If you haven't seen the film already, he looks the part, and he plays the part. And he's extremely nice, genuine young man.
Yeah, I mean, the similarities, he's going to NDSU, 27 touchdowns, 1 interception. Obviously, you've got Trey Lance over at NDSU. His last year, I guess, for them, 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So some strange parallels there.
For sure. Yeah, I would say though, pay attention to a guy like Sean O'Brien. He is going to be the guy for Jamestown that Hilton's going to want to really have to game plan for. He's the guy. You got to know where he is at all times on the field.
And then heading down to Class B, AJ gave me a heads up that Iroquois is nothing to play with. They'll be taking on Batavia also Monday night, 6 p.m. in Batavia. Batavia just got off of a miracle win, Hail Mary, if you so be it, against Monroe. It was a fantastic game. It was cold, but I bared through it, and we got the job done. So what's about – I mean, AJ's been telling me the stats speak for themselves. In your opinion, what makes this Iroquois team so special?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's the thing about Iroquois as collectively as a group, they just buy in quickly and early on. Like this entire team, you can't separate them. Like they're always together. A real strong bond in that locker room amongst players and coaching staff. They just get along really well. They all believe in each other. I know that they sponsored a cross-training athletics throughout the year, which is an organization that comes in and works with the players on, how to win, getting them in the right mindset. Mike Masters is a former coach, and he started cross-training athletics a while ago, and he's one of those guys out there that just can inspire anyone to do great things. And, I think that's one of the things that really helped this Iroquois program is bringing a guy like Coach Masters in to just kind of give the players another voice. You know what I mean? Like a coach could sometimes wear out his welcome with just talking to players as the season goes on. Having that other coach come in every now and again just to address the players, having that other voice come in, I think really works wonders on kids. Just hearing from someone else every now and again. If a coach can tell you how great you are day in, day out, But when a player hears that from an outside voice, I think that reassures them. This is a confident bunch. You have, a team that is always in the weight room. They work out together. They do off-season training together, and they bonded. And I think that's why they've been successful. And they got over the hump. Western New York Maritime tortured this team year after year after year. Well, Maritime got bumped up to Class A. That left the door open for Iroquois to take advantage of Class B. And they did that this year. And they did it with a freshman quarterback. But this is not your typical freshman quarterback. This young man, Justice Kleitz, is the younger brother of Trey Kleitz, who set all kinds of records at Iroquois and even in Western New York with passing touchdowns in a season. He's only a freshman, but he does not play like one. I was there for his first game against Southwestern, and I thought for sure that Southwestern would give him a run for the money, make him look like a ninth grader, and they didn't. And Southwestern is a tough, very well-coached team. That defense was one of their saving graces this year. Well, Iroquois moved the ball on him, and this young quarterback, Justice, played very well in that game. He's got some good receivers. Nate McGoldrick, who's not just a great receiver and dependable receiver for him, he's a good blocker, and he gets it done on defense too. He gets his nose in the middle of things. And when you're playing in Class B, that's when you start to see a lot of players play on both sides of the ball. Shear's number game, you need that. And Iroquois has a lot of guys that can do that. How about this kid, who you probably see the numbers, is Trevor Berry. Now, he's a Connolly Cup finalist, and he's a beast. He's only a junior. Last year, he could have been the Connolly Cup finalist. He's also a wrestler. He is a physical specimen. He really is. He just finds the holes or he makes his own, and he's got great breakaway speed. You're going to really enjoy watching him. That's the kid that that's the kid that's going to keep Batavia coaching staff up at night, is how to stop Trevor Berry, because he just has a no quit attitude. He's a wrestler. He doesn't know, he just goes ball to the wall. I don't know if I can.
No, we're good.
Okay. He just doesn't have, he has one level, and it's just, he just goes, you know what I mean? He's probably one of the better players to watch out of Western New York. I would imagine he's a favorite for the Connolly Cup. He's up there. He's one of the 4 or 5 guys that have a legit chance of being named Player of the Year. I certainly think he's Class B Player of the Year. It doesn't help having a quarterback who can deliver the ball and stretch a field that opens up the ground game. And then he does it on defense as well. And then they got this guy, Big Rig, they call him. I think he's 77. One of their linemen that transferred into the program this past year. You'll see him out there. They just have so many guys that bought in early and put the time in. And then you couple that with a coaching staff that truly cares about the players. Iroquois they're destined for greatness, and we'll have to wait and see. They haven't made it this far. They're 11-0. They faced some adversity, especially last week at the stadium. Pioneer was a good team, kept them under 20 points for the first time all season. I mean, you see the scores, 30, 50, 60 points they're putting up week after week. They almost put 70 points up a few weeks ago on East Aurora Holland. So Iroquois can throw the ball, and they can run the ball, and they can play great defense. And special teams is no joke either. And that's another part of the game that, when you get to this level, you have to be able to kick the ball and punt the ball and grab any extra point you possibly can. So Iroquois will be a tough team.
Yeah, and those stats, as you alluded to for Trevor Berry, a casual 225 carries for 2,181 yards and 42 touchdowns. That's impressive. And you talked about, your AA and A teams talking about these windows. It seems with the junior and Trevor Berry and their freshman quarterback, it seems like this is year 1 of maybe 2 or 3 or 4, where this could just be the start for this Iroquois team.
Yeah, like I was saying, Western New York Maritime tortured this team because Iroquois was good enough to move on. It's just Maritime was really they had Class A talent playing in B. And finally, the competition committee got together and said, we got to do what's right. They're too good to be playing here. So they moved them up. And the kid I wanted to mention, 72, Braden Donnelly, that's the lineman I wanted to talk about. He transferred into this program from out of state. That was like, I don't know, they struck gold with this kid because he is a beast on the line. And this kid could have picked another school or two to go to. but when he stepped on campus there, he really felt at home. But he could have gone to a AA or an A school not too far from Iroquois, and he chose this school here just because of the way the coaching staff and the players all got along. It was like family to him. He's going to be a guy you're going to watch on the line number 72.
Yeah, those stats are just ridiculous. I mean, Batavia has some players in their own right. David McFarland is a dude, especially on the basketball court as well. But he's a great quarterback as well. Can't wait for that matchup. We'll see what the Blue Devils can do to try to slow down either one of those three offensive weapons that you referred to. Because even a receiver that only has 1,000 yards in high school is bonkers. Like that. I don't think people realize, like, you see 1,000 yards in the NFL and you think, oh, that's the standard. Okay, but think about high school. And then think about Class B. Okay, so they clearly have some guys over there. But in Class C, it's going to be they've got an undefeated Lackawanna team at 11-0 taking on Attica. And I'm looking at this Lackawanna team. The writers have them second in the state. But they went through a pretty contested sectional final game, beating Fredonia 22-20. It's funny with these two teams matching up. It's not like there's, at least from the schedules, so to speak, there's not like either team's like far and beyond better than their competition this year. It seemed like they really competed to get to where they are today. But that sectional final game, 22-20, Attica played in a similar game that tight. What about that game showed it gives you belief that this Lackawanna team can like go further?
Well, with Lackawanna, they were up big on Fredonia. They let Fredonia back into that game. They had a comfortable, what seemed to be a comfortable 2-touchdown lead at one point, and Fredonia just fought their way back. They got an interception, maybe a fumble recovery, and maybe a couple of calls at the end of the game that went Fredonia's way that bought them some time, bought some extra downs, things of that nature. But that was a very gutsy performance by Lackawanna. This is a team that is, when you talk about confident quarterbacks, let's start with their quarterback, Billy Getchell. Extremely confident kid. He's had the job since his sophomore year. I remember Tom Prince, a guy that helps me at WNY Athletics. Me and him, Tom and myself, called one of his first football games at Cheektowaga High School just a few years ago, and we were very impressed. And he was one of those kids that, being on the Conley Cup, I had said to the committee, I said, we got to keep our eye on this kid. He's a tremendous young athlete, and he's got a gun, and he's only going to get better with time. And he proved it this year. He did a very good job. He does a good job of managing the offense. He finds the open receivers. He can move it with his legs. They played a very tight game with Depew earlier in the year. They could have gone either way until at the very end, Billy ran in for a touchdown to kind of preserve the win there, take the go-ahead win there. That's what he was able to do that particular day. But they do come out of a rather weak division, no question about it, but they've shown that they can play. They beat Southwestern, a very good team. They also beat Salem, another very tough team. And then that Fredonia game was as good as advertised, probably the best game we saw all weekend. But I think looking back at that game, and I had a chance, Carl, to watch that one more time. I thought Lackawanna was the better team all afternoon, and a couple calls went Fredonia's way that kind of extended drives for the Hillbillies. And it's tough for me to say because I spent a lot of time down in Fredonia, but Lackawanna was the better team that day, and deservedly they're moving on. I'll tell you what, though, this kid, their running back, Antoine Threets, has real solid breakaway speed. He is a very fast player with a ball in his hands, Carl. He's very dangerous. Lackawanna can play defense too. Their wide receivers, they make some circus-like catches. Alexander Hall, I think we tried to get him on SportsCenter Top 10 for making the one-handed Odell Beckham type catch earlier in the year. I don't think it made it, but it probably could have. But if you guys want to go back to the WNY Athletics Twitter feed, somewhere in there you'll see this guy's catch. He has some very good receivers. And they're a solid team. Coach Adam Tardif does a great job, but they're in unknown territory. This is all new for them, but they've handled it well. And getting to the stadium for the first time since, I believe, 2008, they've accomplished a lot this year, but I know that they've got a lot left in the tank, and they're going to give Attica a fight. And I'm sure Attica is thinking the same. This is uncharted territory for the Steelers. Of course, you guys know the famous former Philadelphia Eagle quarterback and ESPN analyst Ron Jaworski is a former Lackawanna Steeler, where he wasn't even the starting quarterback when he was there, by the way. He was a baseball player. So they're going to have Ron Jaworski support this weekend. We'll see how far that carries the Steelers. But You know, Lackawanna, they got a good shot. They got a good shot as anybody this week.
It's uncharted territory for Attica as well. I believe that was their first sectional title in program history a week ago. So both teams are kind of, I don't want to say no man's land, but whatever team's gonna be more composed and more down to earth, and this game's gonna come out on top. But to highlight some of those players that you referred to, Antoine Threet, over 1,100 rushing yards with 8 touchdowns. And then once again, another efficient quarterback out of Section 6. I don't know who's the quarterback guru out there, but clearly they got something in the water over there. 26 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. Good ratio right there. This should be a fun one. Attica's a team that, I talked about Hilton grounding and pounding. Well, I saw Attica for the first time last week, and let me tell you, it's the same exact thing. 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And if they break one for 8-9 yards, everyone in the crowd going crazy. But it's efficient and it works because they slowed down a very explosive Iroquois team that has weapons. I mean, they have a guy, Manny Sepulveda, on the outside who they limited to the best of their abilities, and they came out on top with the win. So they've seen athletes before. They've done a fairly good job, obviously, to get to this point to do so. But based off of what I just said, another styles make fights. Could see if Lackawanna wants to speed the game up or they want to play Attica's game of playing at a snail's pace.
They've got a couple of real big linemen too that could get to the quarterback. Sunday Ikinawa. I always have a hard time pronouncing this young man's last name, number 55, but he'll be tough for Lackawanna. Sunday Ikawanu, I believe that's how you say it, but they've got a few other really big, solid guys on that line that could get to the quarterback. And I think, if anything, that might be an area of concern. If Attica can run the ball, Carl, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue on using that game plan. Certainly keeping the ball out of Getchell's hands would probably be a recipe for success. If I was Attica, that's probably how I'd want to approach this game, is just trying to run that ball and keep the ball out of Getchell's hands.
And then finishing up in Class D, but certainly not the least exciting, because I saw OAE last week, and let me tell you, they are as good as advertised. They'll be taking on Randolph out of Section 6. Randolph, they have a guy, too, who we talked about, Trevor Berry, who's gone over 2,000 yards on the ground. Randolph has a guy, Xavier Hine, 2,000 rushing yards with 25 touchdowns. Obviously, in Class D, the styles of offenses are going to be more catered to the ground game just based off sheer numbers. But this kid's clearly special. What have you seen out of him so far?
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging almost 10 yards per carry. And this guy probably would have 2,500 yards if it weren't for there's a team in Class D that kind of forfeited a game earlier in the year for a number of reasons. And then they didn't get a first-round playoff game. So they only had to play the semifinals and then the finals. But they're another undefeated team. Brent Brown's been with the program for many years. This is a team that's expected to get to this game. They were expected at the beginning of the year. They really dominated. I don't think they were in a close game all year. Franklinville-Ellicottville was our next best Section 6 Class D team. But this, like last week at the stadium, literally Randolph had the ball for the entire third quarter. So they're a ball control offense. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but isn't this a rematch of last year's Class D title game?
That might be it.
I believe so. Yeah.
And I was at that game. I was at that game, and I was very impressed with Oakfield. Very tough team. Good in all phases and very physical. I got to say, that was a very, very physical team I saw last year. Very impressed. Well coached, well-mannered kids. Randolph, this is their second shot at them, and they're gonna have their hands full. They have a good young quarterback too, that can swing it. Carson Conley, when asked to step up, he's been able to do that. I think he's had 10 touchdowns this year, only 500 or 600 yards throwing. It's been the Xander Hine show, and rightfully so. They have a number of guys that can run the ball if needed, but it's all about Xander Hine. They have a tough linebacker there, strong safety, Jaden Huntington, also big, very big young, big player. I believe he's 87. Jaden Huntington, he's one of the catalysts on defense, and he's a big target for when they do have to throw the ball. But I think, Randolph's got their hands full. No question about it. They got their hands full, and I'm sure they remember what happened last year down at Jamestown. So this is going to be probably a tough matchup for them, considering how good their opponent is and the success that they've had in recent years. I don't know. Are they senior heavy again, Oakfield, Alabama?
You've got their two main guys, Noah Curry and Bodie Hyde, which are we've said that over and over again. I believe Hyde is a senior and Courier is a junior. I believe I have that correct. Yeah, Hyde is a junior. Last year in that regional game, 28-22 for OAE. And Hyde and Courier, I don't know it's too much about Class D around the state, but as far as a 1-2 punch in Class D, you're going to be tough to best them. How has Randolph faced a lot of top tier talent this year, or is this going to be kind of a wake up call for them?
Well, that's the concerning part. They haven't really had a lot of adversity. Like I said, the best team that they faced was probably Franklinville, Ellicottville. I mean, they beat CSP twice handily, and CSP is a team that's got 2 state championships. In the last 5 or 6 years, I believe they won 2 state championships. Now, a lot of those parts have moved on and they're playing elsewhere now. They've got some standouts that have graduated from those teams, but they have some younger brothers from those state championship teams that have a championship pedigree, if you will. They all went to Syracuse with their older brothers. You got a couple of guys on that CSP team, but even that wasn't good enough to slow down the Xander Hine running back. And they're just a punishing line. They don't get enough credit for the offensive line that they have there at Randolph. But I always tend to favor the team that's gone through the most adversity to get to this point. How do you play when you're down? How do you play in a close game? And Randolph hasn't had that this year. But again, we're talking about kids. We're talking about 16, 17-year-old kids. They're very resilient. How much adversity do you really have to see on a football field? Well, that's anybody's guess, but I think it comes into play once you get to this stage of the season. And Randolph really hasn't been punched in the mouth. They just haven't been. They've beaten everybody that's been in front of them almost with ease. I mean, they had the ball for the entire third quarter last week.
Yeah, and speaking of, you mentioned not playing in a close game, not being down all year. That's OAE this season. It has just been a wrecking ball this year. They played against Alexander in the Class D championship game, a team that because of the at-large berth is actually going off to Albany. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do against a team that isn't OAE. But, the Aggies have just rolled through everybody they've faced this season. So I guess they're both going to be faced with an unequal opponent for the first time this year. That should be a good one as well. So we've got a ton of great games this weekend. Is there any one final thought you want to leave us with before we let you go here?
Well, honestly, to those seniors that see their seasons are over from Section 5, I know you have a lot of people that watch your show. I just want to say, thank you very much, guys, for going out and playing as hard as you did all year. You're not defined by the football player that you are. You guys are defined by your character and everything else. So I want to say thank you to all those seniors that toughed it out. Some of them 4 years, some 3, 2, 1, however many years you got on your varsity team. Congratulations to you for showing out for your school and yourselves and proving that you can play football at this level. You guys, my hat's off to you guys. Some of the toughest kids you'll ever meet playing that gridiron. We never say enough about those seniors. But best wishes to all those kids that played their final football game this past year. And I wish you guys all well in future endeavors. But as far as the 5 games we have for this Monday night, guys, I'll tell you, these are going to be great games. They all have an extra week to prepare, an extra day or two to prepare for their opponents. I think we're going to see some fantastic football games right down the line. Where are you guys going? I'm going to be at the Jamestown Hilton game.
We're still figuring that out because of the change. I think Carl it's gonna be me and Thad out at the games this weekend. I believe I will be over in the Batavia area for Batavia and the Attica games. I think that's where I'm gonna be this weekend. So we're still figuring that out. The other thing with these extra couple of days, these Buffalo teams, are they going to be able to get together and actually practice, or is this going to be back in Zoom game plan practices for these couple of days here?
I hope for them it's not a Zoom practice, because you're not going to get, I don't think you can get any better on Zoom. I didn't get any better looking on this program. So I don't think they're going to get any better or prepare any better for their opponents. They've been going hard all week. I got to believe they've been going hard all week. They haven't taken their foot off the gas. I would imagine they'll be ready to go. Like I said, they're kids, they're resilient, and they want to get on the field. So I'm sure they're doing what they have to do to prepare. And it's no different to those teams in Section 5. You guys have a good deal of snow that you guys have to deal with. No different than us. These kids, these are tough kids. These are tough kids. And the coaches, they're great. They prepare like none other. These staffs, your 5 coaching staffs have to contend with our 5 coaching staffs. And I know they're 10 of the best coaching staffs in either league. That's why they're here.
All right. Thank you, Frank, for joining us on the show. Really appreciate it. We'll see you out this weekend. Hopefully, snow doesn't hit you guys too bad. And best of luck with the snow and to your teams this weekend.
My pleasure. AJ and Carl, thank you so much for having me. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Have a good one. All right. Once again, we want to thank Frank for coming on to our podcast here. A lot of great insights. With Mary Margaret Johnson in the past, he had a tough act to follow. I think he delivered there, Carl.
Yeah, and then some. He clearly showcased, broke down every single game. It was insightful to hear his words, and I can't wait for the 5 matchups.
Exactly. And then as we mentioned before, it is not just the Far West Regionals this year. We've got 3 teams from the Rochester area going out to Albany. Griffin Haas, our Albany expert, our sister station over there in Albany, providing a lot of great insight and analysis on these matchups. Let's give that interview to you right now. All right, as we just mentioned, bringing in now Griffin Haas from WTEN out in Albany, sports director there. Griffin, thanks for joining us. Thanks for previewing these games for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing more excited than a little playoff football. So glad to be here with you guys.
Exactly. So, the Buffalo versus Rochester games, they all got postponed to Monday. It looks like, fingers crossed, we're staying out of this storm. We just get to see all the reports from Buffalo coming in. So these games will be played Friday, knock on wood. First off, we've got 3 teams from our region going out to the Albany area with these at-large bids, as we talked about all season long. We'll start with the Class AA showdown between Pittsford and Christian Brothers Academy. Albany, CBA for, there's a couple of them, but
we don't
CBA.
want people upset, so.
Exactly. CBA, they have had one heck of a season. Doing a little look at their teams, rolling their 2nd straight sectional title. Just what's really been clicking for them this season?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is their quarterback, Donald Jones. He is a junior. He started for them last year, but they kind of had a rotational deal. But he's just a really dynamic player. He can throw it, but I mean, he's as good of a runner as they have. Just completely dynamic. Really gives defenses a lot of trouble. They've got a really good tight end in Chuck Vollins. So they've got a couple of and a good running back in Jameer Pitcher. So they've got a lot of dynamic players on their offense, and they're big up front. I mean, obviously, when you get into kind of like regional and state play, you never really know exactly how it's going to match up with other areas, so to speak, because we're comparing it all to what we've got here in the area. But I mean, undefeated, they really weren't tested too much. They had they won 21-0 in the championship game. They played against Shen the first time and won pretty handily. Their coach is very established. Bob Burns, a guy who used to coach over at Troy and has won state titles with them. So they are a tough out for sure. A very good team, and I don't know much about Pittsburgh. We haven't taken a look at them, but it's going to be a tough matchup for sure.
Yeah, I saw last year winning the sectional title. Kind of run into a buzzsaw, the eventual state champs. How does this team compare to kind of what they had last year?
I think that talent-wise, it's not necessarily the biggest leap, but what I think is the biggest difference, and even just talking with the team about it, is having the second year with Coach Burns. So he took over there last year. That was his first year there. And because, they are, a school that can bring people in, that still hasn't really felt that impact yet. But, I mean, he can kind of almost recruit in some ways. They haven't had that impact yet from that, just in talking with him, just because it's still only his second year. But just having his second year in his system, guys knowing what to do. I mean, they have a tight end, in David Clement, who is going to Syracuse to play tight end, and he hasn't played at all this year. He hasn't played a snap. So he got hurt in a preseason camp and missed the entire year. So that's kind of one guy that they're missing. But, they got Chuck Vollins, as I mentioned, has filled in very well. So it hasn't been too much of a drop off, but really that familiarity has been a lot different for them this year, where I think last year it was also their first section title, and talking to them, it was like they were very complacent with that, satisfied with it. It was like they had the big celebration, didn't really look much beyond it, and then they kind of got into a spot where they played again. They had the state champs, and it was like, okay, this is a little too much. And they were kind of this year's team. I was talking to Donald Jones, the quarterback, and he was like, yeah, we went to the locker room, like we had some pizza, like we grabbed our stuff, we didn't play music, we didn't really celebrate. It was just kind of like on to the next one. So I think attitude-wise and just familiarity-wise, it's a lot different.
Now that Syracuse tight end, is he out for the year? Is there a chance he comes back for this playoff run?
No, he's out for the year. So he played for them last year, so that's where it's just like comparatively they don't have him. So that's the only really drop-off. I think that they're a little bit probably better up front, but there's no chance he'll play. He had a pretty bad knee injury, so he's out for the year, which was a big bummer.
Yeah, well, luckily securing the scholarship beforehand, always good to get that out of the way, as Carl applauds there. Yeah, and I mean Pittsford. The big question with them is they got this guy Jackson Green. He's playing Division I football. He's been hurt down the stretch, so if he can go, I think this will be a test. If he can't, good luck to the Pittsford Panthers. I'm also looking at CBA's defense. I got them at 2 touchdowns allowed in their last 5 games. So I don't know if that's just the level of talent that AA has fared in Albany region, or if that's just a really dang good defense this year.
Yeah, their defense has been very good. Has been very solid. Donald Jones, their quarterback, also plays defensive back, and he's actually getting looks, I think Division I looks, as a defensive back. So that also says how good he is there and how dynamic of an athlete he is. They've got a lot of good players that go both ways. And I would say that the Shen game, it was pouring rain, not to make excuses, but it was an absolute downpour. I don't know what you guys, like the weather was like for you guys on
the same
title game. Yeah, exactly. So like those kind of games were a little messier. And then they played a Saratoga team that, it was a 10-0 game that was Saratoga had I know they were missing their quarterback. So I think that is a mix of circumstance, a very, very good defense, no doubt about it. They played Shen earlier in the year. I think it was a 41-25 game, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of maybe a sign that they can kind of do it both ways if they have to.
And then going from the big dogs down to single A, Canandaigua taking on Nisakyuna. Nisakyuna is how you pronounce that?
It's Nisakyuna.
Nisakyuna. Okay, I knew I was going to fumble it. Like I just knew I was.
Yeah, there's some names that are some tricky around here for sure.
Yeah, we stumble over Shenandoah. Shenandoah
will get you. I remember my first day, I trembled over it, and my news director came up. He goes, "You can just call him Shen." I was like, "All right, sounds good."
So, I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But this is a matchup, 2 teams that are both 9-2 on the year. Canandaigua coming off their 4th straight sectional title, although this year's team is a different iteration of the previous 3. However, Nisakyuna, I'm gonna struggle with that. This is their first ever. So
yeah.
I guess talk about like how proud the school was and just the team itself that they finally got over the hump and raised a sectional title.
Yeah, I think that it was very exciting for them. The community was very excited about it. Not usually a football powerhouse. It hadn't been in the playoffs in 10 years. So it wasn't just winning the first sectional title. It was they just hadn't been in the mix. And they were one of those teams that for us really came out of nowhere too. Because as you guys know, year to year you go into it and you know a couple of teams that are going to be most likely hang around. And then you look at, some of the other teams that you're like, oh, they've struggled historically, and they started out 1-2. One of those losses was to a AA school, so that's always tough. And since then they've won 9 in a row. So it's really just hitting a stride and kind of, going on somewhat of a magical run. AJ, I know you'll appreciate this. Their head coach is an Ithaca guy, played quarterback for the Bombers. So roll Bombers there. But so we got that connection. But yeah, they've just been in the last couple of games. They haven't really been close. April Park was was a good team. Again, blew them out 35-6 and played LaSalle team that was a little beat up, but won 28-0. They went through last year's defending champs in Burnt Hills in a 9-6 game with field goals galore. So again, another team that's kind of done it in all ways and has been, tested down the stretch.
I mean, speaking on that.
Oh, one second. I'm going to interrupt you there for a second. One better, the Canandaigua head coach is also an Ithaca grad or an Ithaca alum, and the son of Mike Welch.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tremendous. All right. Well, we got an Ithaca battle because Brian definitely played for Welch, so I'm sure that there's some connection. Yeah. We're hitting up practice today. I'll have to ask him about that.
Jeff played that too. I believe he was a linebacker, and Mike does go to a good portion of the Canandaigua game, so you might see him up in the stands there.
Oh, that is tremendous. I'll keep my eye out.
We get a nice little establishing shot of that connection right there. That'd be dope.
Yeah, exactly.
But talking about like how they won down the stretch, they haven't a lot more than 6 points in 4 weeks. I mean, this team is, at least from what their schedule has shown, has gotten progressively better as the year has gone on. I know you said they came out of nowhere, but like, is there anything from like what you can tell that they're just doing much better than what they were doing in September?
Yeah, I think again, it's kind of just familiarity and clicking down the stretch. I haven't, how it goes. Obviously, we go to a bunch of different games. I haven't been to one of their games up close and personal. That I've just the way that the cookies crumble there. But from what I can see with like Averill Park, I mean, Averill Park's a really good offense. They put up a bunch of points in a LaSalle game and beat Amsterdam. I think they put up like 41 points, something like that, or something like that. I could be mistaken, but they put up some points. So that was a good offense. LaSalle was a little beat up in that 28-0 game, and then Burnt Hills. Looking at them, that was kind of more of a slugfest team. So I think that they're all proven teams that they blanked. I mean, they beat a Troy team 21-0 a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I think that it's in talking with them too. It is a lot of, confidence, familiarity. Kind of, they've got a lot of young players. So just kind of those young guys, kind of getting that experience down the stretch because they're starting a lot of young guys.
And you mentioned they haven't made the playoffs in like 10 years. How many? Well, everybody makes the playoffs out here in Rochester. How does it work out there in Albany?
Oh, so in Albany, they are in the capital region here. They only for 4 teams make it. So there's 2 divisions. There's the Grasso division, and then there's the Capital division. They are in the Grasso division now. Only the 2 best teams from each division make it. So they won the Grasso division by beating Burnt Hills. Then played a regular season game, and then they were in. So there's only semifinals and finals for A. Class C is a little different. They do 8 teams. So yeah, no, there's only 4 teams that make it. So you gotta be on your P's and Q's here, because if you tie it and there's 3-way ties, it comes down to quarter points, which I don't even want to get into. There's weird tiebreakers. It's all sorts of stuff. So to make the playoffs is significant in its own right around here.
We are well familiar with weird points and tiebreakers. I'm sure everybody's got their same messed up way to determine these damn teams. We just let them publish the things, and then we look at them. So
I was like the Charlie Day gif from Always Sunny with the whiteboard, just trying to figure out quarter points. So yeah, it's tough.
Godspeed to you for that. And then finally, our final of the 3 matchups on Friday night. Down in Class D, we've got Cambridge Salem, ranked number 8 in the state right now, taking on our Alexander, number 7. Alexander got housed by OE, but OE is going to do that to a lot of teams. Tell me about this Cambridge Salem team coming into this matchup undefeated on the season.
Yeah, they are another physical running team. They've got a running back, Evan Day, who I don't know for you guys with Class D, you have guys where you look at and you're like, that guy's just bigger than everybody else. And he is that for them. You look at him and you're like, whew, that guy sticks out. I mean, I think he would stick out for some AA teams. So he's a tremendous running back for them. They've got a couple of guys that run the ball. Yeah, he's just looked it up because I was curious. He's 6'2", 230. So he's a big boy coming. He's a big boy coming out of the backfield for them. So that's one guy to look out for. They got another running back, Bryce Burr, who's very talented. I think that Class D is one of the classes because they are some of the smaller schools that you never really know what you're going to get necessarily. They played a Chatham team that has a lot of good athletes, but again, they're smaller schools, so they're smaller kids, and I think that they just kind of out-physicaled them. They played Greenwich, who won the chip last year, but lost some talent. They beat them 44-0 earlier in the year. So it's one of those things where I'm excited to see them go against some of the competition out of the capital region to see, okay, like how well do they hold their own against some of these. It's one of those things you never really know, especially with Class D for us, where it's like you could have a really good Class D team, or you get out and you say, okay, there's some other teams in this state that are a little more complete. So we'll see, but yeah, they've got Evan Day is really their go-to. He's gonna get the ball a lot.
Yeah. I was looking at the stats on Max Preps. I got him with 3 running backs with more rushing yards than their quarterback. So it seems like they're just gonna pound and ground you to death as it kind of often does in Class D there.
Exactly. Yeah, their quarterback. They don't really throw the ball much. He's basically playing point guard. He's like, let's just get these guys the ball and let's get out. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're looking at Evan Day's run for 110.5 yards per game, and Bryce Burr's running for 92 yards per game right now for them. So that's 200 yards between those two guys, and then they got another guy who's going for about 60 yards per game. So they are going to run the ball, and if they can stay ahead of the sticks, it's one of those things where if they can do that and they can get a lead and they can run with it. But they did show that they can come back from a deficit. I think they were down 14-0 in the second championship game, kind of sleptwalk in the beginning of that, and then just rolled from there. So they turned it on. So I think how they start will be a big determining factor.
Exactly. So those are our matchups. Kind of time to take a look at the whole. It seems like if you're gonna pinpoint one of your teams to maybe go on a deep run, it's that CBA squad that's really looking the strongest here. If you had to take a guess.
As far as the teams that you guys will be matched up with, that I would say that, because we've got a team in Class C that I think could really make some noise. Their combined team with Lake George, Warrensburg, North Warren, a 3-way combination. And they've been dominating. But as far as the teams that you guys are playing, I think that CBA has a chance if they were to win this game and Carmel were to win, they'd have a rematch there. So obviously, when Section 1 comes up, a lot of times, I don't know if it's similar for you, but whenever Section 1 comes up, it's always a tough out. So that would be the thing that would hold them back. But I know they've told us that they want that game. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I would say CBA out of 3.
Gotcha. Well, we are looking forward to those games. Thank you once again, Griffin, for coming on to the podcast, previewing it. We'll have all of those highlights on Channel 8, News 8 Friday night, thanks to Griffin and the fine folks over at WTEN. So we thank you for that. Thanks for joining us. Good luck covering all the games this weekend.
Absolutely. I'll send you a complete VO of just Mike Welch if I find him. So I'll promise I'll throw that up online for you.
If I'm anchoring at 11, I will be glad to do that. I will just run Mike Welch reaction shots. That's all I'm looking for. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. And once again, we want to thank Griffin for coming onto the podcast. I don't know if we mentioned it. We alluded to it, but he was a classmate of mine over at Ithaca College. So always good to have Griffin on the show. We thank him once again. And not just football. We've got a lot of other teams making their state runs. We just had soccer wrap up. We had a lot of great teams going out there, a couple from Spencerport, Avon, McQuaid, of course, a couple of girls teams, Byron Burgeon, Keshequa. We had one state champion coming from Section 5. It was the Fillmore Eagles winning the sectional title or the state title with a 2-0 victory. They had to win an overtime game in the semifinals. So a nice run for the Eagles there, their first state title in program history. So congratulations to the Eagles right there. And then this weekend, we've got volleyball coming up. The boys, we've got 2 teams going, both of our squads, Spencerport and Webster, going off to the Far West Regionals. On the girls side of things, we've got 3 teams going. Iroquois, we've got Wayne, and then we've got HAC going out to the Albany area once again. We both got a chance to catch up with the boys teams. Carl, you were over at Webster. What'd you glean from your discussions there with the Lakers?
Kind of a return to what they used to be. This was a team that I believe won 4 sectional titles in the 90s and then just hit a severe, went downward spiral. This is their actual first sectional final appearance since the 90s. And now they make it back and they win in that year. Same legendary coach has been there the entire time, 33 years. This is a team that only has 3 seniors, but the 3 seniors are pretty darn good. They're confident that they're here, but the gist of the conversation was they're doing this for all of Section 5, right? That was the gist I got was obviously they're proud to be here, but they made it clear that, hey, we think Fairport could be the best team in the country. We think McQuaid could be in the state. McQuaid can be the best team in the state. We just happen to be the best team on that day, and we're going to go down there and do the best we can to represent all of Section 5, not just us.
Yeah, and I have seen Webster play twice in the regional matchup and the sectional final. They be very good. They can hit the heck out of the ball. They can defend. Their blocking is just extraordinary. I saw in set 4 of the Far West Regional game, they won 4 of their first 5 points with blocks, and they just get at you. So good luck to the teams down there. I went out to Spencerport earlier this week. That report already aired, so you can check that on rochesterfirst.com. The Webster stuff is coming out on Friday. But that Spencerport team, this is a squad that is basically brand new from that team that lost in that state championship game last year. They got swept. All games really close, 25-22. They lost 9 seniors on their team last year. They lost their entire starting lineup, but they reloaded. They rebuilt their 3rd straight sectional title, so they're looking to raise their first state banner in program history. Spencerport has had a lot of great programs over the years, wrestling, girls soccer, of course. So the boys volleyball team looking to add a white banner up to the gym, as their players explained to me. So we have got a lot going on, and we covered a lot for you. We've also got swimming that's at the Webster Aquatic Center, so we'll see if we can get out to that as well. So a busy time, another longer show as we always do for these regional matchups, but thank you very much for joining us. We want to thank again Frank, and we want to thank Griffin for coming on to the podcast. We got a busy weekend ahead of us. Carl, it's going to be a fun time.
Fun time and a lot of hand warmers being used.
Exactly. Well, luckily the volleyball, we still have not figured out our schedules yet with the swimming and everything. This football, cancellation, postponement has changed everything around. But I think we might be getting out to the volleyball, where indoor sports, we love it. We love the indoor sports.
Love to see that. Love it.
Exactly. So we will have all that for you on News 8 and on rochesterfirst.com. Once again, thank you for joining us on the High School Huddle podcast. You can listen to us on rochesterfirst.com and on YouTube. You can also catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We will not have a show next week because of Thanksgiving, a little holiday where we eat and we watch football. So I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving break. We will be back probably in 2 weeks. It'll depend on kind of where our teams go, what we want to do. We might do an award show. We'll see what we do. But we will be back with you at some point to talk again on the High School Huddle podcast. So time to break the huddle. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Fellman. Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you in a little bit.